How Dare You Respect Me by Queenie Eanaj. Introduction. You only respected me when it benefited you. Don't call it respect if it only shows up when I'm quiet, compliant, or convenient. There's a different kind of hurt that comes from someone who swears they respect you right after they've torn you down, talked over you, dismissed you, or laughed at your pain. They disrespect you in private and then show you respect in public, and somehow you're supposed to be grateful. The truth nobody likes to say out loud is this: a person who disrespects you first and apologizes later isn't learning. They're rehearsing. I reached a point in my life where I stopped asking, "Why don't you respect me?" and started asking, "Why am I still here, letting you?" Because I did speak up. I did say not today. I did say I'll talk to you later. I tried to step away before my anger spoke for me. And somehow, I still became the villain. You got mad because I finally matched the energy you'd been throwing at me for months. You wondered why my love changed, never realizing you were the one who trained it to. What I'm writing here isn't bitterness. It's clarity. This book is about seeing disrespect when it shows up in small ways, refusing to normalize what hurts, choosing self-respect over being liked, and learning that love without respect is just attachment dressed up pretty. I'm not here to shrink myself to keep the peace. I'm not here to teach grown people how to treat me. I'm not here to sit quietly while someone plays victim to the wounds they created. If my boundaries offend you, it's because your disrespect depended on my silence. And I'm done being quiet. This is my story, my healing, my voice, for every time I swallowed the truth just to keep someone else comfortable. If you feel this, if you've lived this, if you've ever had to rebuild your dignity, then you already know they don't get to disrespect you and still expect your loyalty, softness, and patience. Not anymore. Welcome to How Dare You Respect Me. We're telling the truth here. Chapter 1. Respect was the bare minimum. Respect isn't supposed to be earned by begging for it. It's supposed to be present because I'm human. But somewhere along the way, people convinced us that we should be grateful for crumbs, grateful for being tolerated, grateful when someone finally acts right after treating us wrong. That was my first mistake. Thinking respect was something I had to bargain for instead of something I was born deserving. It didn't start with screaming or arguments. It started small, little jokes about me, talking over me, rolling eyes, laughing when I expressed how I felt. They brushed it off as just playing, just teasing, just being honest. And I let it slide. Not because I didn't see it, but because I didn't want to be too sensitive, too much, or too emotional. So I swallowed it. I told myself, it's not that serious. I told myself they love me. I told myself, pick your battles. But here's what I learned the hard way. When you teach someone that your feelings don't matter, they graduate from small disrespect to bigger disrespect, with honors. It grew. Suddenly my time didn't matter. My boundaries didn't matter. My words didn't matter unless they agreed. And when I finally spoke up, they acted confused. What did I do? Why are you tripping? You're being dramatic. No, I wasn't being dramatic. I was finally refusing to accept less than the bare minimum. Because respect is not a luxury item. It's not a reward. It's not something someone gives you only when you behave the way they want. Respect is the floor, not the ceiling. And looking back, I realized something. They never respected me. They respected what I did for them. They respected my silence. They respected my convenience. But me, my feelings, my peace, my limits, they treated like they were optional. I remember thinking, maybe if I communicate better, they'll understand. Maybe if I stay calm, they'll finally get it. Maybe if I keep explaining, they'll change. But people who understand and keep doing the same thing aren't confused. They're comfortable. There's a difference. The real shift happened when I stopped looking at their behavior as mistakes and started seeing it as choices. They chose to ignore me. They chose to talk over me. They chose the joke over my dignity. And I realized something that stung at first, but saved me later. Anyone who truly respects you doesn't need to be reminded how. Respect shows up naturally. It shows up in tone, in listening, in effort, in how they speak about you when you're not in the room. It doesn't disappear the moment you set a boundary. And the more I awakened to that truth, the more I felt this quiet strength rise up inside me. Not loud, not angry, just clear. I don't need to fight for room in relationships that were never meant to hold me. So I started doing something different. I stopped explaining, I stopped begging, I stopped trying to prove I deserved the bare minimum. Instead, I started observing. When the joke was always at my expense, when the conversation always turned into competition, when my feelings were always minimized, I didn't argue, I took notes. Because once you truly see disrespect for what it is, you can't unsee it. And you stop personalizing it. You realize it's not a reflection of your worth, it's a reflection of their character. Respect was the bare minimum, and somehow they still came up short. This chapter of my life wasn't about anger. It was about waking up. Waking up to the fact that I had trained people how to treat me by accepting what I should have walked away from the first time. And this time, I chose differently. Not louder, not harsher, just wiser. Because the moment you realize you deserve better, disrespect stops sounding like love and starts sounding like noise. And I refuse to live in noise anymore. Chapter 2, Not Today. My silence is not submission, it's self-preservation. There's a difference between ignoring someone because you're scared and ignoring them because you know better. I had to learn that the hard way. I used to feel guilty for not responding immediately, for not feeding into arguments, for not giving someone the satisfaction of a reaction. I remember one night sitting on my bed, staring at my phone, heart racing because I'd gotten a text that could spark hours of conflict if I replied. My first instinct was to answer, to defend, to explain myself, to show them they couldn't break me. But something inside whispered, "Not today." At first, "not today" felt small, strange even, like I was breaking some invisible rule about how I should handle disrespect. Like walking away without speaking meant I was weak, or avoiding confrontation meant I was letting them win. But silence isn't weakness. Silence is a shield. It's a way to keep your energy where it belongs, with you. "Not today" became a phrase I repeated in my head when conversations tried to pull me off my center. "Not today, I won't explain myself to someone who isn't listening. Not today, I won't give you power over my peace. Not today, I won't let your chaos invade my calm." And it worked. The first time I really enforced it, I felt guilty for about 5 minutes, then a wave of relief washed over me. I realized my anger didn't need to speak for me, my voice didn't need to defend what was mine, my energy didn't need to be borrowed for someone else's drama. I started noticing something remarkable. When I didn't react, they did. Not in the way they expected, not in a way that gave them control. They noticed, and it made them uncomfortable. That discomfort, that was my power showing up. Every time I held my tongue, instead of matching their energy, I learned the value of timing. Every pause became a wall no one could climb without my permission. Every careful silence saved me from hours of chaos I didn't need to live through. Every breath I took, instead of arguing, gave me clarity I could not have had if I had given in to the fight. Clarity is the best revenge. Not shouting, not storming, not making someone feel guilty. Clarity, calm, boundaries that do not bend. "Not today" became my mantra, my pause button, my invisible do not disturb sign. And yes, people noticed. Not in the way they thought. They noticed because their control no longer worked. They noticed because silence is louder than any argument. They noticed because they could no longer rely on my energy, patience, and tolerance like they had before. And some got angry. Some tried harder. Some threw guilt like it was a weapon. Some acted shocked that I wasn't engaging, like I had changed overnight. No, I hadn't changed. I had woken up. I began to understand that my energy is finite. My peace is precious. My heart is sacred. And anyone who couldn't honor it didn't get a seat at my table. Some days, it's not today. Some days, it's never today. And that is exactly how it should be. I want you to picture this. A friend texts you. They're upset about something trivial, but they come at you with blame, guilt, or old wounds they've refused to address. Before you would have replied immediately, you would have tried to explain yourself, to soothe, to calm. Not today. You don't have to. You breathe. You let it be. You protect your calm. That small act, that pause, that silent not today is a revolution. And it's not just about protecting yourself from others. It's about protecting yourself from yourself. How many times have we gotten pulled into fights we didn't need, replayed old arguments in our heads, or let someone else dictate our mood? Saying not today gave me permission to feel first, think second, and act when it mattered, not when someone demanded it. Not today also taught me boundaries in practice, not just in words. People who respected me before now had to adjust. People who thrived on chaos realized my peace was not theirs to steal. People who gaslit or dismissed me could no longer count on my tolerance as a safety net. And I realized, with every not today, that my silence was louder than any argument I had ever had. Some days I still had to repeat it to myself like a prayer. Not today, not today, not today. But the more I practiced, the freer I became. I stopped justifying the unjustifiable. I stopped carrying the weight of someone else's chaos. I stopped giving my energy to people who didn't deserve it. And then I noticed something else. Not today doesn't make people hate you, it makes them see you. Not today doesn't make you cold, it makes you wise. Not today doesn't shrink your love, it reshapes it to fit the people who actually earn it. Not today isn't just words. It's a lifestyle, a rhythm, a heartbeat that reminds me every single day that my life, my energy, my heart, and my love are mine to give, not mine to lose in someone else's drama. And that is exactly how it should be. Chapter 3. You started it. I didn't make you disrespect me. You chose to show me who you are. And for the longest time, I didn't want to admit it. I kept looking for excuses. I blamed myself. I replayed conversations, searching for that exact moment I provoked you, trying to find the invisible line I crossed. I thought if I could just understand it, fix it, explain it, maybe it wouldn't happen again. But it wasn't me. It was you. It started small. A joke at my expense, a sigh when I tried to talk, a dismissive comment that passed as humor. And I let it slide. Not because I didn't see it, but because I wanted to be easy, pleasant, good. I swallowed it all, tucked it away, told myself it wasn't worth the fight. But little by little, those small cracks widened into deep, jagged holes. My patience wore thin. My dignity chipped away. And one day it hit me. I wasn't overreacting. I was finally seeing the truth. You started it. I remember a night clearly. I had been quiet all evening, letting the conversation unfold. And you, in that usual way, rolled your eyes, laughed at something I said, and turned it into a joke at my expense. I froze, heart tight, because in the past I would have laughed along to keep the peace. But this time, something inside me clicked. I didn't move. I didn't smile. I didn't defend myself. I just watched, and I felt it, the pattern. You were comfortable disrespecting me because I had allowed it, comfortable talking over me because I had let you, comfortable thinking my silence meant my weakness. I wanted to scream, to yell, to explain, to make you understand. But instead, I whispered in my head, not today, I told myself. Not today am I letting your behavior shape my mood. Not today am I letting your chaos invade my calm. Not today am I giving you power that doesn't belong to you. And in that silence, I felt something shift. I didn't know it yet, but that small act of not engaging was the beginning of reclaiming myself. You started it, and I had a choice. I could react or I could respond. I chose response. I started paying attention, really paying attention. Every sigh, every joke, every dismissive glance, every interruption, I started seeing it for what it was, a reflection of your character, not mine, not your moods, not your anger, not your impatience. None of that had anything to do with my worth. I began cataloging these moments in my mind like invisible receipts. Each one reminded me, this is not okay. Each one reminded me I deserve better. Each one reminded me I am allowed to leave this space if it doesn't honor me. And here's the thing, recognizing it wasn't enough. I had to act. I had to shift how I existed around you. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped justifying my feelings. I stopped letting you dictate my energy. I stopped tolerating disrespect disguised as fun or truth or honesty. You started it, but I finished it on my terms. I remember another moment. We were in a group laughing about some trivial story, and you made a comment that stung, aimed right at my insecurities. Before, I would have smiled, laughed nervously, maybe even apologized for taking offense. But that day, I let the silence speak. I let the discomfort sit. I let the weight of your choice settle on you, not me. I didn't add fuel. I didn't chase your approval. I just breathed and observed, not with malice, not with revenge, just with clarity. It was liberating. For the first time, I realized that anger isn't always about yelling. Anger can be quiet. Anger can be a pause. Anger can be refusing to give someone what they've trained you to give, your energy, your patience, your validation. You started it, but your choices don't get to rewrite my story. They don't get to make me feel small or unworthy. They don't get to define how I love, how I respect myself, or how I protect my peace. And over time, that awareness became armor. The more I refused to absorb your disrespect, the more I felt my own strength grow. I stopped excusing behavior that once seemed harmless. I stopped personalizing actions that weren't mine to carry. I stopped apologizing for existing the way I exist. You started it, but I finished it with intention, with calm, with boundaries that could not be crossed. I finished it with the understanding that my peace is non-negotiable, my energy is sacred, and my love is no longer for someone who cannot respect it. Once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. And that's the blessing. The realization freed me in ways I didn't know were possible. I understood finally that respect isn't a reward, it's the bare minimum. And anyone who doesn't give it willingly has no claim to your patience, your time, or your love. You started it, and I finished it. Not with anger, not with guilt, not with proving anything to you. I finished it with clarity. I finished it with calm. I finished it by remembering who I am and what I am owed. And that changes everything. 4. I finished it. I answered your chaos with my calm and my peace won. There's a strange kind of power in not meeting someone where they expect you. You think silence is weakness. You think stepping back is giving up. You think not reacting is letting them win. But the truth? Not reacting is winning in ways they'll never understand. I remember the moment clearly. You were storming, throwing blame, dragging old wounds into the air like flags, trying to make me flinch, trying to make me feel small. And I stood there, quiet, watching, breathing. Not because I didn't care, not because I was indifferent, but because I had learned something crucial. Your chaos isn't mine to manage. Your anger isn't my responsibility. Your disrespect is a reflection of your character, not mine. For years, I had absorbed it. I had allowed your moods to shape mine, your words to determine my value. But not anymore. This time, I chose differently. I finished it. And finishing it didn't mean yelling louder, proving harder, or forcing you to see the truth. It meant choosing calm over chaos, clarity over confusion, boundaries over bending. It meant protecting my energy when you tried to steal it. It meant letting your actions speak for themselves while I held my peace like a shield. There's a lesson in watching someone unravel their own nonsense while you stay still, collected. It's a quiet kind of satisfaction. Not revenge, not smugness, just awareness. You see everything they are, everything they are not, and you realize you don't have to play a part in their story anymore. I finished it by putting myself first, finally, by refusing to explain what shouldn't need explaining, by refusing to justify my boundaries, my decisions, my emotions. I learned that boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They're life vests for my soul. They're how I stay afloat when someone else's waves get too high. I finished it by walking away from patterns that no longer served me, from conversations that left me drained, from people who couldn't see my worth even when it was spelled out in every action, every word, every moment. And here's the thing. Finishing it isn't a single dramatic scene. It isn't a showdown. It's hundreds of small moments where you choose your peace over their pressure, where you choose your dignity over their disapproval, where you choose clarity over chaos. And eventually those moments add up. They create a life where you no longer feel the pull of someone else's storm. You create a life where you are untouchable by disrespect because you've built armor out of self-respect. I remember one day feeling it fully, that quiet, unshakable strength. You were trying, as usual, to bait me into an argument, trying to make me chase your attention, trying to draw me into your narrative of blame. And I simply smiled, not mockingly, not with bitterness, just a soft, knowing smile. Your chaos could no longer rattle me. My calm was louder than your storm. My peace was heavier than your weight. I finished it by learning that my love didn't need to be loud to be strong, that my respect for myself was louder than any argument you could throw, that my energy was sacred, and it didn't have to bend to your discomfort, your ego, your history of disrespect. Finishing it also taught me a lesson about forgiveness. Not the kind where you absolve someone who hurt you, but the kind where you release yourself from carrying them. You can forgive and still protect your peace. You can forgive and still keep your distance. You can forgive and still say, this is the last time I allow this energy in my space. I finished it by seeing clearly that your disrespect never defined me, that your attempts to diminish my worth only highlighted my strength, that choosing calm, clarity, and boundaries over chaos, reaction, and rage didn't make me weak, it made me wise. And the peace that comes after finishing it, it's unlike anything else. It's quiet, sure, but it's deep. It's the kind of peace that doesn't need to announce itself because it's unshakable. It's the kind of peace that says, I am done, I am whole, I am enough, I am free. Finishing it doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending it never happened. It means deciding finally that their choices are theirs, and your life, your heart, your love, and your dignity are yours. I finished it, and in finishing it, I found myself. Chapter 5, Love Transformed. My love isn't weaker, it's wiser. There's a difference between someone who loves blindly and someone who loves consciously. I used to give everything, thinking that pouring myself out meant I was loving well. I thought love was endurance, swallowing disrespect, excusing repeated mistakes, shrinking myself so someone else could feel bigger. I thought patience meant silence, compliance meant affection, and tolerance meant devotion. I was wrong. I remember a night clearly. I had spent weeks trying to explain something that mattered to me. You ignored it, made a joke of it, and laughed when I flinched. Before, I would have chased your approval, apologized for caring too much, and rewritten my truth to make it digestible for you. But that night, I stopped myself. I caught the impulse to bend, to just to validate. And in that pause, I whispered, Not today. Not today, I told myself. Not today do I shrink for your comfort. Not today do I let your chaos determine my peace. Not today do I let your choices define my love. And in that moment, something shifted. I realized love isn't about giving endlessly to someone who can't meet you halfway. Love isn't about endurance or sacrifice at the cost of your dignity. Love is care. Yes, but care tempered with respect, boundaries, and wisdom. Love is protection of your energy as much as it is expression of your heart. I started noticing patterns I had ignored before. I noticed when attention was conditional, given only when convenient. I noticed when words didn't match actions and promises were rehearsed excuses. I noticed how my energy was drained by people who treated love as optional but expected in abundance. And instead of excusing it, rationalizing it, or apologizing for feeling hurt, I began to act differently. I started with myself. I allowed rest when I was tired. I allowed space when I felt overwhelmed. I allowed my feelings to exist without justification. I allowed myself to say no without guilt. And the deeper I went into self-respect, the clearer it became that love could flow freely, but only when it was given and received honestly. There was another night, weeks later, when someone I had loved deeply tried to explain away their mistakes. Their voice was soft, but the weight of expectation was heavy. Before, I would have swallowed the pain, accepted the excuse, and let the story reset. But that night, I didn't. I listened, nodded, and felt my boundaries solidify. My heart stayed soft, but my armor was on. My love was present, yes, but no longer naive. Love transformed when I stopped confusing endurance with devotion. When I stopped thinking patience was proof of love. When I realized that giving endlessly to someone who won't meet me there only teaches them to take without giving back. Love transformed when I understood that reciprocity is not optional, it's essential. That attention and care must be earned, not demanded. That respect is the foundation upon which love thrives. And the freedom I felt in that realization, it's unlike anything I've ever known. I still care, still show up, still give myself to the people who matter. But I no longer sacrifice my energy for those who don't recognize its value. I no longer bend to make someone else comfortable at the expense of my dignity. I no longer confuse attachment with intimacy, fear with loyalty, or tolerance with love. I laugh sometimes thinking about the version of me who let love blur her lines, swallow her words, and apologize for existing. That version taught me everything I needed to know about boundaries, self-respect, and intentional love. And now, when I love, it's full-bodied, deliberate, and unshakable. I've learned that love doesn't need to scream to be strong. It doesn't need chaos to prove depth. It doesn't need sacrifice to show care. True love shows up consistently, with respect, with honesty, and with recognition of both hearts involved. It doesn't diminish you to elevate someone else. It doesn't punish to teach lessons. It doesn't demand at the cost of your peace. I remember walking away from a relationship that had taught me too many lessons too painfully. I felt the weight of grief, yes, but also the strange lightness of freedom. For the first time, I realized love could hurt, and I could survive. Love could leave, and I could thrive. Love could disappoint, and I could hold on to myself. And in that realization, my love expanded, wiser, stronger, and unshakable. I still love, deeply, fully, honestly, but I no longer lose myself in the process. I no longer give my heart to anyone who can't meet me there. I no longer excuse disrespect, tolerate neglect, or apologize for existing as I am. My love is intentional, grounded, and fiercely protective of what I bring to it. And that's the difference. My love transformed because I transformed. Because I learned the hard lessons, rebuilt my heart, and refused to shrink again. My love is mine to give, not theirs to misuse. My love is deliberate, clear, and uncompromising. And the freedom that comes from that transformation, it's more powerful than any heartbreak I ever endured, This is the love I live in now, the love I offer now, the love I deserve now, and I'll never settle for less. Chapter 6, No Excuses Allowed. Excuses never erase the hurt. They only postpone truth. I spent too many years listening to the stories people told to cover their behavior. I didn't mean it. I was stressed. You're too sensitive. It's not my fault. And I believed them. I believed the rehearsed explanations, the carefully constructed narratives that asked me to forget the impact of their words, their actions, their indifference. For years, I let excuses dictate how I responded, how I felt, even how I saw myself. I apologized for taking up space. I apologized for feeling hurt. I apologized for needing more than they were willing to give. And every time I swallowed, every time I accepted an excuse, I gave away a piece of myself. I remember the first time it really hit me. A friend, someone I had trusted, dismissed me with a wave of excuses after something small but meaningful. They hadn't followed through on something they promised, and when I called it out, they launched into a string of justifications. I didn't think it mattered. I forgot, but it's not like it was intentional. You're blowing this out of proportion. And I froze because a part of me wanted to explain why it mattered, to argue why my feelings were valid. I wanted to bend myself into a version that made them comfortable, that made me reasonable. But then I caught myself. Not today, not ever again. I realized that my willingness to absorb excuses had been a pattern of self-erasure. Every but I accepted was a message to myself that my worth was negotiable, that my dignity could be discounted, that my feelings were optional. And when I saw it for what it was like a fog lifting. Excuses aren't bridges to understanding. They're masks hiding accountability, shields to protect someone else from facing the consequences of their choices. I began paying attention. In romantic relationships, in friendships, at work, even in family interactions. Every time someone offered a reason instead of an apology, I listened for the truth behind it. And I noticed something remarkable. The excuses were all the same. They didn't heal, they didn't repair, and they didn't change behavior. They just postponed reality and hoped I would keep quiet long enough for them to feel better about themselves. I remember sitting across from someone I had loved deeply, someone who had consistently crossed boundaries, someone who had relied on excuses to justify their neglect. They spoke fast, listing every reason why they had hurt me, every circumstance that supposedly excused their choices. I could feel the old reflex in me to soften, to explain, to validate their story. But I paused, I breathed, and then I said quietly without malice, I hear you, and I choose my peace. No anger, no lecture, no drama, just clarity. That was a turning point. Refusing excuses is not about being unforgiving. It's not about punishing someone for their mistakes. It's about reclaiming your energy, your boundaries, your dignity. It's about refusing to let someone else's choices dictate how you feel about yourself. Excuses are convenient for them, but they cost you. They cost you time, emotional bandwidth, and the quiet confidence that comes from trusting your own worth. I started noticing excuses in every corner of my life. In my workplace, colleagues who promised results but offered I didn't have time or it wasn't clear as explanations. In friendships, people who flaked and said I was busy or I forgot while expecting me to be understanding without question. Even in casual interactions, small excuses piled up, and each one chipped away at my patience, my clarity, my peace. And I realized if I kept accepting them, I would never fully honor myself. No more. I started treating excuses like what they really are. Reflections of someone else's choices, not assessments of my worth. I learned to differentiate between genuine oversight, a rare thing, and habitual avoidance. And the ones who avoided accountability, they no longer got access to my heart, my energy, or my time. I walked away silently, calmly, letting their stories collapse under the weight of their own unreliability. It wasn't easy at first. Old habits die hard. The reflex to explain, to justify, to make others comfortable at the cost of my own feelings was powerful. But each time I chose clarity over comfort, I felt my boundaries strengthen. Each time I refused to make room for excuses, I felt my dignity rebuild itself piece by piece. And slowly, something extraordinary happened. My life began to feel lighter. My heart began to feel larger. My energy began to flow freely, no longer diverted to editing someone else's story to make it palatable. I even noticed excuses in myself. I had been using them too, for staying in situations that drained me, for tolerating disrespect, for shrinking when I should have stood taller. The truth cut like a knife. Excuses are a habit, a reflex, a comfort, but they are never a solution. They are temporary relief for someone else's discomfort and permanent compromise for your own well-being. Once I named it, once I acknowledged it, I refused it. No excuses allowed. Not for them, not for me, not ever again. And the ripple effect was profound. Life opened up. People who had relied on excuses to avoid accountability fell away naturally. Those who mattered, the ones who matched words with actions, care with consistency, respect with love, stayed. And my energy, my attention, my heart, all of it expanded. I realized that every excuse I had tolerated in the past had been a drain, and every excuse I refused from that moment on was an investment in myself. Excuses will always exist. They are easy, persuasive, and convenient. They are the human instinct to avoid responsibility, to protect ego, to delay discomfort. But when you stop giving them power, when you stop absorbing them, when you stop negotiating your self-worth for the comfort of someone else, life changes. You stop shrinking. You stop tolerating what doesn't serve you. You stop letting someone else dictate the terms of your life. And you start living aligned with your truth, not theirs, not the story they tell to cover their choices, but your own. I carry this lesson now in every interaction, every choice, every boundary I set. I don't argue, I don't fight, I don't convince anyone of anything. I observe, I process, I act. Excuses do not get a seat at my table. Excuses do not dictate my worth. Excuses do not determine my peace. No excuses allowed. And in that refusal, I found myself. I found my clarity. I found my freedom. And in that freedom, I finally understood. No one's excuses can ever change the truth of your worth, the value of your dignity, or the power of your self-respect. Chapter 7, The Mirror Effect. Your actions are the mirror. Your words are the mask. It's a lesson I wish I had learned sooner, but some lessons have to hit you in full color before they sink in. I used to take everything personally, every slight, every dismissive glance, every careless word. I thought their disrespect was about me, about what I did or didn't do. I thought their anger, their rudeness, their passive aggressiveness reflected some flaw inside me. I blamed myself. I rewrote my story to fit their narrative. I asked myself, did I provoke this? Did I overreact? Did I fail somehow? And every time I did that, I ignored the truth that was right in front of me. Their behavior says nothing about me. It says everything about them. I remember a time in particular. It was a small gathering, nothing significant, nothing monumental, or so I thought. Someone I cared about spoke to me sharply, their words cutting, their tone dismissive. I froze, heart hammering, thinking maybe I had misstepped. I replayed the interaction in my head. What did I say wrong? What did I do wrong? I searched for the mistake inside myself, but the more I looked, the emptier it felt. And then it hit me. This had nothing to do with me. It never did. Their sharp words, their impatience, their judgment, it was their reflection, not mine. I started seeing it everywhere after that. In relationships, in friendships, in family dynamics, the people who lashed out weren't angry at me. They were angry at the world, at themselves, at the limits of their own control. The people who dismissed me weren't rejecting me. They were rejecting parts of themselves they couldn't face. The people who tried to manipulate or gaslight me weren't trying to confuse me. They were trying to cover up the mirrors they refused to look into. And mirrors don't lie. I learned that when someone disrespects you, when they gaslight you, when they deflect or project, it's a reflection of what they carry inside. Their insecurity, their fear, their frustration, their inability to take responsibility, their unresolved pain. And no amount of bending, excusing, or justifying on my part could ever fix it. Because it wasn't broken. They were. I tested this idea slowly. Every time someone lashed out, I paused. I breathed. I asked myself, is this about me or is this about them? And most of the time, the answer was clear. This is about them. Their mirror, their mask, their story. Not mine. Once I started seeing people this way, I noticed something remarkable. The less I internalized their behavior, the freer I felt. The less I blamed myself, the stronger my boundaries became. I stopped apologizing for the reflection of someone else's chaos. I stopped over-explaining my feelings. I stopped carrying the weight of someone else's mirror. And slowly, I started understanding the difference between empathy and absorption. Empathy is understanding that someone is struggling. Absorption is believing you caused it. I also began noticing the masks. Words are masks. Apologies without change are masks. Sweet talk to cover harm is a mask. I started reading between the lines, paying attention to consistency over charm, actions over words. And the more I watched, the clearer it became. The mask might be convincing, but it never changes the reflection. Eventually, the mask slips. Eventually, the mirror cracks. And when it does, you see the truth. I remember one evening, sitting in my car after a conversation that left me shaken. Someone I had trusted had lied, then tried to soften it with a string of words meant to reassure me. I could feel my old reflex, panic, doubt, the urge to chase the narrative. But I paused. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror, and I asked, what is your reflection telling you? Not their words, not their excuses, not their mask. What are you seeing here? I saw calm. I saw clarity. I saw boundaries intact. I saw the truth of who I was in the situation. Someone deserving of honesty, someone capable of discerning reality, someone unwilling to tolerate deception any longer. That's when it clicked. Their mask couldn't touch me. Their reflection couldn't define me. Their actions were theirs, not mine. I started applying this everywhere. When someone treated me poorly, I asked myself, is this a reflection of me or them? When a friend canceled last minute, when a partner raised their voice, when a family member dismissed me, was it about me or was it about the mirrors they carried? The answer came quickly. Always them, never me. And this realization didn't make me cold. It made me precise. It made me discerning. It gave me the ability to choose carefully where to place my love, my energy, my trust. It didn't mean I stopped caring. It meant I stopped misplacing care. It didn't mean I stopped loving. It meant I stopped confusing reflection with truth. I even started noticing the ripple effect. When you stop absorbing other people's mirrors, when you stop wearing their masks as your own, you become untouchable in a way. Not invincible, but grounded. Not indifferent, but discerning. Not bitter, but wise. And in that space, people either rise to match your clarity, or they fall away, showing you exactly who they are without you needing to guess. There's freedom in that. Real, deep freedom. The kind of freedom where you no longer feel responsible for cleaning up the emotional mess someone else left. The kind of freedom where you can step back and watch a person reveal themselves in their own reflection. The kind of freedom where your heart isn't a sponge, absorbing projections, excuses, and misdirections. I began to see mirrors everywhere. Not literally, of course, though sometimes I caught myself staring at my reflection and wondering how much of it was truly mine. But in people, in words, in actions, the mirrors were everywhere. And I stopped letting them dictate how I moved, how I loved, how I existed. I let them reflect without absorbing. I let masks speak without convincing. I let mirrors exist without letting them define me. Your reflection is yours. Your energy is yours. Your peace is yours. Their mirror is theirs. Their mask is theirs. And the moment you stop blending the two, you stop getting lost. You stop tolerating disrespect disguised as reflection. You stop confusing manipulation for attention. You stop letting projection masquerade as reality. That's the lesson. That's the lesson, OU, is about them, not you. Not you. What they project is their story, not your truth. What they hide behind is their fear, not your flaw. And when you understand that fully, you start moving through the world differently. You start holding your space without guilt. You start loving without confusion. You start seeing clearly, always. The mirror effect is not revenge. It's clarity. It's discernment. It's the ability to observe without absorbing. And when you live in that truth, you finally stop bending, apologizing, excusing, or shrinking to fit someone else's reflection. You stop losing yourself in the shadows of other people's masks, and you start being fully, unapologetically, unmistakably you. And that's a picture I want you to hold. You standing in the light, watching the mirrors, seeing the masks, knowing the truth, and never letting anyone else's reflection rewrite your story. Chapter 8, Boundaries Are Armor. Every line I drew was a life vest for my soul. I didn't always understand boundaries. At first, they felt restrictive, almost selfish. I thought being good meant bending, giving, explaining, excusing, forgiving, shrinking. I thought love meant absorbing someone else's chaos until it seeped into my bones. I thought loyalty meant sacrificing my peace just to keep someone else comfortable. Until I realized something, the people who thrived in my life weren't the ones I bent for. They weren't the ones I excused. They weren't the ones I over-explained to. They were the ones who honored the invisible lines I drew, even when I didn't say anything. They understood the weight of my presence and the importance of my peace. Boundaries are not walls. They're armor. They're shields. They're the invisible force fields that keep your heart from being a punching bag for someone else's unresolved issues. And just like armor, they only work if you wear them consistently. If you don't take them off for comfort, for love, for fear of losing someone. I learned this the hard way. I remember a time in my life when I let someone cross my limits repeatedly. Little things at first, arriving late without consideration, interrupting my thoughts, dismissing my feelings. I laughed them off. I rationalized. I said, it's fine. Maybe they're tired. Maybe they didn't mean it. But then the small things compounded. A late text became a pattern. A dismissive tone became a habit. And the more I tolerated, the smaller I felt. My peace was leaking through the cracks I hadn't closed. It wasn't dramatic. There were no fights, no shouting matches, no blown-up moments. Just a slow erosion of respect. Theirs for me and mine for myself. And that's when I realized boundaries aren't about keeping people out. They're about keeping yourself in, safe, whole, intact. So I started drawing them. Small at first, almost invisible. Saying no without feeling guilty, leaving a room when the energy felt wrong, refusing to answer messages that came with judgment disguised as concern. Each line I drew was a whisper to myself. I matter. My peace matters. My dignity matters. And each time someone respected that line, I saw their reflection in a new light. Someone capable of honoring truth, of honoring presence, of honoring me. But here's the thing about armor. It's only effective if it's visible to you, if it's recognized internally, if you commit to wearing it even when it's uncomfortable. There were times I took it off for love. Times I let my heart expose itself without the shield, thinking vulnerability would soften the world. And every time I was reminded why the armor existed. The people who couldn't honor the lines I drew saw them as weaknesses, not safeguards. They tested, pushed, stretched, chipped away at them. And I learned something critical. Love without boundaries is not love. It's just permission to be mistreated. I began testing this armor deliberately. I would notice situations where my limits were at stake. Someone crossed a line. I spoke up. I held my ground. Sometimes it caused discomfort. Sometimes it caused arguments. But every time I held the line, I felt stronger. Every time I refused to shrink or justify my space, I felt lighter. Every time I refused to absorb someone else's chaos, my armor proved itself. Boundaries don't just protect you from others, they protect you from yourself. They remind you of your worth. They remind you that your needs are valid, your feelings are real, your energy is sacred. They stop you from giving what you shouldn't give, from staying in situations that drain you, from allowing disrespect to become normalized. They are the blueprint for self-respect, the architecture of a life lived on your terms. There's a moment that sticks with me. I was sitting on a bench, waiting for someone who had repeatedly promised to meet me. Late again. I felt the familiar twinge of frustration, that old reflex to rationalize, excuse, forgive, shrink. But instead, I pulled my phone out and sent a simple message. I'll see you when you're ready. I'm not waiting in the meantime. No guilt, no anger, just a line, my boundary, my armor. And when they finally showed up hours later, they approached with a new energy, respect for the time I had claimed, respect for the line I had drawn, respect for me. Armor works like that. Sometimes it's invisible until tested. Sometimes it's questioned, challenged, pushed. But if you wear it consistently, the world learns, slowly, unwillingly, sometimes begrudgingly, that you will not compromise your peace for convenience, your dignity for comfort, your soul for someone else's comfort. I also learned that boundaries are contagious. When you model them, people begin to understand the weight of respect. When you refuse to tolerate behavior that doesn't serve the relationship, the energy shifts. You teach, not by lecture, not by drama, not by anger, but by example. You teach that presence is valuable, respect is non-negotiable, and peace is worth protecting. Boundaries are not static either. They grow with you. They shift with context. They adapt to the seasons of your life. What was acceptable yesterday may be intolerable tomorrow, and that's okay. Armor isn't meant to be rigid. It's meant to be alive, responsive, and resilient. It's meant to protect without trapping. It's meant to honor without isolating. I won't lie, sometimes wearing armor feels heavy. Sometimes it feels isolating. Sometimes it feels lonely. But the alternative, living without it, letting every slight, every disrespect, every unchecked boundary erode your peace, is far worse. The alternative is being chipped away slowly until you don't recognize yourself in the mirror. The alternative is living a life dictated by the whims, moods, and chaos of everyone else. I draw my lines now deliberately, and I wear my armor proudly. I know where I end and others begin. I know when to engage and when to step back. I know which energy to absorb and which to let bounce off the shield. And the peace I feel in that knowledge is priceless. So yes, boundaries are armor. They are not punishment. They are not walls to keep people out. They are invitations to step in correctly, to show up fully, to engage honestly. They are a testament to the value of your own soul, a protection for the life you are building, and a guidepost for who belongs in your inner circle. Every line I draw, every no I speak, every boundary I uphold is a declaration. I am here. I am whole. I am worthy. And nothing you do can take that away if I do not allow it. Wear your armor, protect your peace, honor your worth, and watch the world adjust. Because when you finally respect yourself enough to stand behind your lines, everything else falls into place. Chapter 9. Silence speaks louder. Sometimes the loudest answer is no answer at all. I spent years talking when I should have been still. I explained myself, over-explained myself, justified my feelings, reasoned my worth, hoping someone would understand, hoping someone would see me clearly, hoping that my words could fix what their actions broke, hoping that I could talk the disrespect out of existence. And some days I believed it worked. Other days I realized it never did. There comes a point when you notice the futility, when you realize that your explanations don't change people, your reasoning doesn't soften them, your anger doesn't scare them straight, your love doesn't teach them humility. And that's when silence starts to speak louder than anything you could ever say. I remember a time in my life sitting across from someone who had hurt me repeatedly, who had crossed line after line, and who had asked yet again for my patience. My chest felt tight, my mind raced, my heart wanted to fight, to shout, to make them see, but my soul whispered, "Not today." I chose silence. I didn't walk away in anger. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't plead for acknowledgement. I simply stopped feeding the energy that wasn't meant for me. I let my absence, my pause, my refusal to engage do the talking. And in that silence, something remarkable happened. The space I created became my own. My clarity, my peace, my dignity. They all expanded into the quiet, and I realized sometimes saying nothing is the most powerful statement of all. Silence is a shield. Silence is a mirror. Silence is a boundary in action. It's a refusal to participate in chaos. It's a declaration that you will not compromise your energy to validate someone else's choices. Silence is your armor when words fail to carry weight. I learned that silence isn't passive. It's intentional. It's not waiting to see what happens. It's choosing exactly what happens. It's a form of self-preservation that speaks volumes without a single syllable. I began testing it, practicing it. Every time someone tried to bait me, I paused. Every time someone threw chaos in my direction, I didn't respond immediately. Every time someone attempted to provoke guilt, shame, or fear, I let the silence rise like a tide between us. And the effect was powerful. People notice when you stop chasing them. People feel the shift when your energy no longer bends to their whims. People realize, often too late, that your presence is not something to be taken for granted. Silence has a way of exposing truth. It makes room for reflection, for them and for you. It reveals who is genuinely invested and who was only interested in testing your limits. I remember a relationship that had spiraled into constant arguments, constant justification, constant trying to prove myself worthy. Every conversation felt like a battle. Every apology felt rehearsed. Every attempt to explain felt futile. And one day, I simply stopped talking. Not out of anger, not out of spite, but out of necessity. Silence. The weight of it was immediate. The tension shifted, the chaos quieted. The disrespect lost its power because I stopped feeding it. And in that quiet, I felt a strength I had never known before, a confidence that didn't depend on validation, a peace that didn't require their acknowledgement, a clarity that didn't need their approval. Silence is also reflective. It allows you to hear yourself. It allows you to see patterns, to notice behaviors, to understand the rhythm of your relationships. It allows you to distinguish between who truly belongs in your life and who only takes space without care. In the quiet, the truth of others' intentions becomes louder than their words ever were. In the quiet, you see who respects your boundaries, who honors your energy, and who will never be worth the space you give them. I began using silence deliberately. When someone's words were meant to provoke, I paused. When someone's energy was toxic, I stepped back. When someone's excuses piled up like bricks, I didn't argue. I let the silence stack higher than their words could reach. And in that stack, I built my fortress. My peace became unassailable. My clarity became unshakable. My self-respect became undeniable. Silence is not indifference. It is not apathy. It is a choice, a powerful, deliberate choice to preserve your energy and protect your heart. It is not about avoiding confrontation. It's about choosing which battles are worth your life force. Some fights require words, yes, but many do not. Many fights are won simply by refusing to participate in the energy that doesn't serve you. I've seen it in friendships too. People who expected me to engage in endless drama, to rationalize their behavior, to comfort their guilt, to take responsibility for their mistakes. They were shocked when I stopped responding. They didn't hear anger in my silence. They didn't hear resentment. They heard nothing. And that nothing was louder than anything I could have said. And in that silence, they were forced to confront themselves, forced to see the gaps between who they said they were and how they actually acted. I also noticed how silence protects love. Not love that is weak or passive, but love that is wise and discerning. When I chose not to respond to disrespect, when I chose to step back instead of chasing someone's approval, I preserved my capacity to love genuinely. I preserved the ability to engage with those who deserved it. I preserved the space for relationships that were mutual, reciprocal, and grounded in respect. Silence became a filter, a sieve that separated the people worth my energy from those who were not. And there's a kind of poetry in that. The quiet that once felt like emptiness became a canvas. The absence of response became a signal. The refusal to explain became a declaration. I realized that the loudest stories, the clearest lessons, the deepest truths are often told without a single word. Silence also teaches patience. It teaches endurance. It teaches awareness. It teaches that you do not need to validate every emotion, every expectation, every demand. Silence allows space for reflection, for understanding, for clarity, and it allows you to step fully into your own power without interference. I learned to honor silence as a companion, not a void. I learned that when I am quiet, I am strongest. I learned that when I step back, I move forward. I learned that when I stop feeding chaos with my voice, I reclaim the energy that had been scattered across too many unworthy battles. The people who mattered understood. They noticed. They respected it. They matched it. They responded with care, integrity, and consideration. And the ones who didn't? Silence showed me who they were in the clearest possible terms. No drama, no spectacle, no explanation needed. Silence spoke, and it told the truth louder than any argument ever could. Sometimes the loudest answer is no answer at all. Sometimes the clearest message is delivered by the absence of participation. Sometimes the strongest boundaries are spoken in the language of quiet. And when you embrace that, when you allow silence to work for you instead of against you, when you trust it as a tool, a shield, a messenger, you step into a kind of power few will ever truly understand. Silence is my statement. Silence is my armor. Silence is my freedom, and it is louder than anything they could ever shout. Chapter 10. My love's different. Now I still love, but I don't lose myself anymore. Love used to feel like surrender. I thought it meant giving everything, bending every rule, shrinking my world, silencing my needs, absorbing every chaos someone else brought into my life. I thought love meant patience without limits, forgiveness without learning, loyalty without reciprocity. I thought love meant never defending my own peace, never prioritizing my own boundaries, never listening to the quiet whispers of my own heart. I thought love meant staying when I should have walked, until it wasn't. I learned the hard way that love without respect is not love. It's attachment. It's habit. It's fear disguised as care. It's a pretty wrapping on a hollow box. And I unwrapped a lot of boxes before I realized the gift inside wasn't meant for me. The respect wasn't real, the care wasn't genuine, and the love I gave was slowly eroding me from the inside out. My love changed when I started seeing clearly, when I began noticing the patterns of disrespect, when I honored my boundaries, when I recognized mirrors and masks, when I embraced silence as a tool. My love began to transform. It didn't disappear. It didn't weaken. It just evolved. It became wiser, sharper, and more intentional. Now I love differently. I love in ways that protect my soul. I love in ways that recognize my worth before anyone else's. I love in ways that honor energy, truth, and mutual respect. I don't bend for convenience anymore. I don't excuse harm disguised as mistakes. I don't chase someone's approval or validation. I don't redefine myself to fit their story. My love is a gift, not a tool. My love is a choice, not a chain. I remember a time when someone I loved deeply repeatedly crossed the same lines. At first, I made excuses. Maybe they didn't see, maybe they were stressed, maybe it wasn't intentional. But those little lines became cracks in my heart. Each time, I patched it with explanations, apologies, and patience, until I realized my patches were full of holes. That's when I started loving differently. I sat across from them one day, words ready to defend myself, to justify, to rationalize, to plead. But the reflection of their behavior, their repeated disregard, the echoes of my own ignored voice, it stopped me. I didn't need to explain. I didn't need to plead. I didn't need to shrink or apologize for existing fully. I simply let my love show up differently. Not absent, not cold, not indifferent, but firm, steady, and intact. Love differently doesn't mean I am cold. It doesn't mean I am unfeeling. It doesn't mean I am incapable of passion, intimacy, or vulnerability. It means I love in full color, but I don't bleed where it isn't safe. It means I pour into those who pour back. It means I engage with hearts capable of holding the weight of truth. It means I protect my energy, my joy, and my peace, even if it means stepping away from someone I once thought I couldn't live without. I've learned that loving differently requires courage. It's scary to set a line and watch someone step back rather than step up. It's terrifying to see the people you thought indispensable drift away when you stop tolerating disrespect. It's uncomfortable to place yourself first in a world that glorifies self-sacrifice. But the discomfort is temporary. The freedom is lasting. The peace is unmatched. I remember another moment, a different relationship, a friend I once trusted with my whole heart. Small things at first. Canceling plans, dismissing feelings, forgetting promises. I ignored them, excused them, rationalized them, until the pattern became undeniable. I began to withhold my energy, not out of spite, but out of necessity. I stopped making myself available for emotional labor that was never reciprocated. I stopped chasing validation that wasn't coming. And when I did, something miraculous happened. Space opened up for healthier connections, for relationships where love and respect existed in balance, where energy was mutual, where boundaries weren't optional. Loving differently also taught me the beauty of selective vulnerability. I still open my heart, but only where it is safe. I still care deeply, but only where it is valued. I still share joy, intimacy, and connection, but only with people who deserve it. My love is no longer blind. My love is no longer indiscriminate. My love is no longer a free-for-all to anyone willing to take it. It is sacred, deliberate, and full of intention. I've also learned that loving differently is revolutionary in its simplicity. People expect you to stay, to forgive endlessly, to normalize disrespect, to absorb chaos, to redefine your boundaries for their comfort. But when you love differently, when you honor your peace, protect your dignity, and follow the rules of respect you've set, it shocks them. Your love becomes rare, your presence becomes a privilege, and suddenly the world learns that you are not a canvas for projection, not a sponge for guilt, not a punching bag for unresolved pain. Love differently, and you will notice it. You will see who is willing to meet you on equal ground, who understands the weight of trust, who values your time, your energy, your heart. And you will also see who cannot, who refuses, who will walk away. And that's okay. Because loving differently always leaves room for the right people to stay, people who deserve your heart, your trust, and your care. There's a story I carry with me. A partner I thought I could never let go, someone whose presence had defined a chapter of my life. Old me would have begged, pleaded, explained, shrunk. New me, I stepped back. I let silence speak. I let boundaries hold firm. I let the reflection of their choices show me exactly who they were. And in that space, I felt love differently. Detached but compassionate, wise but tender, present but untouchable by chaos. I loved without losing myself. I loved without compromise. I loved without fear of being alone. I still love, yes. And it is full, and it is real, and it is alive. But my love carries the lessons of every boundary I've drawn, every mirror I've faced, every silence I've held, every chaos I've refused to absorb. My love is wiser. My love is stronger. My love is clearer. My love is intentional. Loving differently isn't easy. It requires reflection, courage, and a willingness to face the mirrors, masks, silence, and boundaries you've set for yourself. But it is worth it. Every tear, every heartbreak, every boundary, every quiet moment of observation, it all builds the foundation for a love that is sustainable, joyful, and true. So if you've ever loved and lost yourself in the process, know this: your love can evolve, your heart can heal, your trust can be restored differently, your energy can be protected, your peace can be honored, and your love can be as magnificent as it was meant to be, without compromise, without apology, without loss of self. Love differently, love wisely, love intentionally, love fully, but never at the cost of who you are. And when you do, you'll see what I mean. My love is still alive. My heart is still open. My spirit is still generous. My capacity for joy is still immense. But my love now carries the armor of experience, the clarity of lessons learned, the strength of boundaries enforced, and the wisdom of knowing exactly where it belongs. I still love, but I don't lose myself anymore. And that changes everything. Chapter 11, Conclusion. How dare you respect me? How dare you respect me only when it suited you? Let me say it again, because this is the line that matters. How dare you respect me only when it benefited you? Only when it was convenient? Only when it made your life easier? Respect is not a trend. Respect is not earned through silence, through tolerance, through bending myself into corners you thought I'd stay in forever. Respect is not optional. Respect is the baseline. Respect is the foundation. And you started without it. You started with small things first. Jokes, interruptions, dismissals, subtle digs hidden in conversation. You started by testing boundaries, pushing limits, seeing how far you could go before I said something. You started by making my patience a habit, expecting me to swallow chaos while calling it love. And I finished it. I finished it by seeing the truth in every chapter of this life we've lived together. I finished it in chapter 1, when I recognized that respect is the bare minimum and nothing less is acceptable. I finished it in chapter 2, when I said not today. My silence is not submission, it's self-preservation. I finished it in chapter 3, when I reminded myself, you started it. I didn't create your disrespect. You did. I finished it in chapter 4, when I answered your chaos with calm and realized my peace was stronger than your noise. I finished it in chapter 5, when my love transformed. It became wiser, intentional, fierce, untouchable by those unwilling to see my value. I finished it in chapter 6, when I refused to accept excuses as truth, when I refused to be gaslit or misled. I finished it in chapter 7, when I saw mirrors and masks for what they are, reflections of character, not definitions of my worth. I finished it in chapter 8, when I armored myself with boundaries, not walls, protecting my soul with every line I drew. I finished it in chapter 9, when silence became louder than words, teaching that walking away is a power move, not a weakness. And I finished it in chapter 10, when my love became deliberate, still strong, still deep, but no longer blind. How dare you respect me only when it suited you? That line is the thesis, the anthem, the declaration. And if you ever forget it, remember, my boundaries are sacred. My peace is priceless. My love is intentional. My silence is loud. My patience is earned. This isn't a habit. This isn't a trend. This is a lifestyle, a standard, a rule. This is the map for anyone who has ever been disrespected, disregarded, or dismissed. This is the message. You cannot take me for granted. You cannot bend me to your convenience. You cannot expect my loyalty, my softness, my love, or my patience after you have shown me who you are. I started with being disrespected. I finished with self-respect. I started with chaos. I finished with peace. I started giving blindly. I finished giving deliberately. I started being tested. I finished being unshakable. And now anyone who comes into my life knows the truth. I will not accept disrespect. I will not compromise my peace. I will not negotiate my worth. How dare you respect me? Only when it's convenient. No more. This is my standard. This is my voice. This is my life. This is my love. And anyone who steps into it better respect it. Every moment, every word, every boundary, or they won't step in at all. I am Queenie Eanaj. I am seen. I am whole. I am unshakable. And I will always respect myself first. How dare you respect me now you know. Chapter 12, Dedication. To every soul who chose peace over pain, to every person who set a boundary and held it even when it hurt, to every heart that refused to shrink, that refused to compromise its worth, this is for you. To those who have swallowed their truth to keep someone else comfortable, who have tolerated disrespect only to realize enough is enough, this is for you. To the ones who learn that love without respect is just attachment dressed up pretty, this is for you. To everyone who has ever said not today, who has ever walked away to protect their peace, who has ever loved deliberately instead of blindly, this is for you. May you always remember your worth, protect your heart, and honor your boundaries. May you always finish your story on your terms. This is my gift, my voice, my truth. Because I see you, I honor you, and I know your fight is real. This book is yours too.